The royal family has been no stranger to controversy, but when King Charles, the head of the British monarchy, was forced to release a full report detailing Meghan Markle's alleged bullying during her time as a working royal, it sent shockwaves through the world. The royal family's reputation had already been tarnished by various public feuds, and this report was like throwing fuel onto an already raging fire. Meghan Markle, once heralded as the fresh breath of modernity within the royal fold, found herself embroiled in accusations that seemed to contradict everything she had once stood for. For years, Meghan had spoken out about her experiences in the royal spotlight, shedding light on the isolation, the media scrutiny, and the challenges of being a part of one of the most famous families in the world. She had positioned herself as a victim of both systemic and personal attacks, painting a portrait of an unfairly treated outsider within the royal palace. But now, with the release of this official report, the narrative was about to shift. King Charles had had enough. The claims that Meghan had created a toxic work environment were no longer rumors whispered in the corridors of Buckingham Palace. They were now documented and out in the open. The report itself was a detailed account of numerous complaints made by royal staff members who described Meghan's behavior as not only erratic but at times borderline aggressive. Those close to her during her time as a member of the royal family began to speak out, shedding light on the supposed challenges of working with the Duchess of Sussex. These were not just anonymous sources. Some were senior members of the royal staff who had worked alongside Meghan in an official capacity, making the claims all the more significant. And yet, despite the seriousness of the accusations, Meghan's supporters were quick to dismiss the claims, arguing that they were politically motivated or merely the result of personal vendettas. But what about the efforts to suppress these allegations? Was it true that Meghan had attempted to use her connections to silence those who might speak out against her? The allegations didn't just stop at workplace bullying. There were whispers about efforts to use her royal status to manipulate the situation in her favor. Could it be that she was trying to blind the royal staff, both literally and figuratively, to the truth? What was most shocking was how these accusations were handled, or rather, mishandled. Royal protocol demanded that such serious allegations be dealt with privately, but the report indicated a blatant disregard for this protocol. King Charles, acting with a sense of urgency and frustration, chose to release the report to the public. This was not a small leak or a tabloid rumor. This was a full-scale, official release of highly sensitive information that could alter the public's perception of Meghan Markle forever. As the details of the report emerged, the world was left to process the weight of what had transpired behind closed doors. Was Meghan the victim of a royal establishment out to destroy her? Or was there more to the story? How much of what was being said about her behavior was true, and how much was simply the result of palace politics? To understand the impact of this report, we need to take a closer look at the timeline of Meghan's rise within the royal family, the friction she encountered, and the events that led to the eventual fallout with the institution she once seemed so determined to join. In the beginning, Meghan Markle was the perfect addition to the royal family. Her charm, her American background, her advocacy for gender equality, and her relatable personality made her an instant hit. She was a breath of fresh air in a family known for its stiff upper-lip demeanor. At first, it seemed like the British monarchy had found a modern-day princess who would help steer the monarchy into the 21st century. Her marriage to Prince Harry seemed like the ultimate fairy tale, capturing the attention and hearts of people across the globe. Meghan was seen as someone who could blend tradition with modern sensibilities, someone who would challenge the old guard while keeping the best traditions of the royal family intact. It was easy to see why the public had so much faith in her. She was a former actress, with a background in humanitarian work, someone who appeared poised to make a real difference. The media coverage surrounding their wedding was nothing short of a global event, and for a time, everything seemed perfect. But perfection, as it turns out, was fleeting. As time went on, cracks began to appear. Meghan's clash with the press was one of the most well-documented aspects of her royal tenure. At the heart of her complaints was her treatment by the media, which she and Harry felt was nothing short of racist and unfair. Her every move was scrutinized, her words twisted, and the press painted her in a light that seemed determined to undermine her at every turn. This battle with the media only grew more intense after Meghan and Harry's decision to step back from royal duties and seek a life of financial independence in North America. But the friction wasn't limited to the media. Meghan's relationship with other members of the royal family was strained from the outset. There were reports of tension between her and Kate Middleton, her sister-in-law. The press, ever eager to fuel drama, portrayed the relationship as one of rivalry and jealousy. But those who worked closely with Meghan during her royal tenure claimed there were deeper issues at play. It wasn't just the public feud with the press or her complicated relationship with other family members. Staff members who had worked directly with Meghan began to complain about her behavior. They described a volatile environment in which demands were frequently made without consideration for the people expected to fulfill them. Royal aides were reportedly walking on eggshells around Meghan, fearing the repercussions of any mistake. What made the allegations even more explosive was the suggestion that Meghan had attempted to blind royal staff members to the truth. These weren't just whispers of a difficult personality or a diva-like attitude. No, this was something far darker, attempts to conceal the reality of her actions. Was Meghan really trying to manipulate the situation to her advantage? Were there concerted efforts to discredit those who spoke out against her? These were questions that needed answers. King Charles, in an unprecedented move, chose to release the report, and the reaction was swift. The royal family had always maintained a strict code of secrecy and confidentiality. Internal disputes were meant to be handled behind closed doors, not aired in public for the world to scrutinize. But here was King Charles, authorizing the release of the full report, signaling a shift in how the monarchy would handle public relations moving forward. It was an explosive decision that only added to the growing tension surrounding the royal family. The report itself was comprehensive, detailed, and, in many ways, damning. It painted a picture of a working environment that was difficult to navigate, with Meghan at the center of it all. Staff members who had once praised her for her charm and influence now spoke of feeling intimidated and harassed. Some even described incidents where they were allegedly threatened by Meghan, while others spoke of being manipulated into silence. What stood out most was the sense of fear that seemed to pervade the staff's experience with Meghan. The Duchess of Sussex, it seemed, had created an atmosphere where compliance was expected, and any deviation from her demands was met with swift consequences. But the most startling part of the report was the claim that Meghan had tried to blind royal staff to the truth. What did this mean? Were these merely the musings of disgruntled employees, or was there something more to the story? These were the questions that needed to be answered as the royal family braced for the fallout from the release of the report. How would Meghan respond? And, more importantly, how would the public react? The stage was set for an unprecedented royal crisis, one that could reshape the future of the British monarchy and challenge everything the royal family had worked to protect. With the release of the report, King Charles had not only opened a door to scandal but had also set in motion a chain of events that could have far-reaching consequences for Meghan Markle and the entire royal family. The rise of Meghan Markle within the royal family was nothing short of a fairy tale. When she married Prince Harry in 2018, she was seen as a breath of fresh air within the British monarchy, a welcome departure from the more traditional and often stuffy image of the royal family. Meghan, an American actress with a background in activism, had already carved out a successful career before meeting Harry. Their union was a captivating love story that seemed to captivate the world. Meghan was praised for her advocacy on issues such as gender equality, mental health, and social justice. The public saw her as a modern princess, someone who could change the monarchy's outdated image. The wedding was a spectacle, watched by millions across the globe. Meghan and Harry were viewed as a progressive couple, bringing diversity and inclusiveness into the heart of the royal family. Their union was seen as a win for both the monarchy, which was attempting to modernize, and for the broader public, who celebrated Meghan's ability to bridge cultural divides. However, as time went on, the relationship between Meghan and the royal family began to show signs of strain. Tension between her and the British press was one of the first indicators of trouble. Meghan, who had been outspoken about her struggles with mental health and her experiences with the relentless scrutiny of the media, soon became a lightning rod for both admiration and criticism. The press, which had initially welcomed her as a glamorous addition to the royal family, quickly turned on her, reporting on everything from her wardrobe choices to her strained relationship with her family in the U.S. But it wasn't just the media that was becoming a source of contention. Meghan's relationship with other members of the royal family also began to sour. The most publicized of these was her reported tension with Kate Middleton, the Duchess of Cambridge. In the early days of her marriage, Meghan and Kate were seen as close, even sharing a bond over their shared responsibilities as mothers. However, rumors of a rift between the two began to surface shortly after Meghan and Harry's wedding. The media reported everything from disagreements about the bridesmaids' dresses to more personal conflicts that were never fully explained. While the media continued to focus on Meghan's supposed rivalry with Kate, those working within the royal household began to notice a more concerning pattern of behavior. Meghan's approach to her royal duties was seen as unconventional at best. There were reports of her making demands of royal staff, expecting them to meet her high standards at all costs. Staff members who were once eager to assist the Duchess now found themselves walking on eggshells, fearful of making even the smallest mistake. What was once a promising relationship began to deteriorate, and Meghan's image as a modernizing force within the royal family began to shift. The pressure was mounting, and behind the scenes, it was becoming clear that the life of a working royal was taking a toll on the Duchess. She and Harry seemed increasingly at odds with the royal establishment, which was still bound by centuries-old traditions and rules. Meghan, on the other hand, had built a life for herself that was grounded in independence and activism, values that were sometimes at odds with the royal family's more reserved public persona. It wasn't long before Meghan and Harry announced their decision to step back from their royal duties in January 2020. The world was stunned. The couple's statement, issued via social media, declared that they intended to become financially independent while continuing to serve the Queen in a limited capacity. This was a direct challenge to the monarchy, a rejection of the traditional royal path. Meghan and Harry wanted to carve out a new life for themselves in North America, free from the scrutiny and constraints that came with being full-time members of the royal family. But their exit was not without its controversies. Meghan's critics, both in the media and within the royal family, accused her of abandoning her royal duties. They claimed that she had failed to understand the gravity of her role within the institution. The press, who had once celebrated Meghan, now turned against her with even greater intensity. The allegations against her began to mount: her strained relationship with Kate, her apparent disregard for royal protocol, and, of course, the claims that she had been difficult to work with behind the scenes. The situation reached its boiling point in March 2021, when Meghan and Harry sat down for an explosive interview with Oprah Winfrey. The interview was an unprecedented moment in royal history, one that would forever alter the narrative surrounding Meghan and her relationship with the royal family. During the interview, Meghan made several bombshell revelations, including accusations of racism within the royal family and claims that she had been unsupported during her mental health struggles. The interview was a turning point. Meghan's portrayal of herself as a victim of both the royal family's expectations and the media's cruelty resonated with many, while others viewed it as a betrayal of the institution that had given her so much. Meghan's supporters rallied behind her, calling for a re-evaluation of the royal family's treatment of her. At the same time, her critics doubled down on their claims, calling her ungrateful and manipulative. It was clear that the rift between Meghan and the royal family was irreparable. But what was truly happening behind the scenes during this time? While Meghan's public image was being scrutinized, those who worked closely with her were beginning to speak out. A number of former staff members began to share their stories, some anonymously, describing a toxic work environment under Meghan's leadership. The bullying allegations began to surface, painting a picture of a woman who was not just difficult to work with, but allegedly cruel to those who served her. These were not just casual complaints. They were detailed accounts from royal aides who had been present during Meghan's time as a working royal. The reports were damning. And then came the report. King Charles, in an act that shocked the royal establishment, authorized the release of the full report detailing the accusations of bullying. It was a decision that sent shockwaves through both the royal family and the public. For a family that had spent centuries maintaining an air of secrecy, this was a radical move. The report was released to the public, and the world was given a glimpse into the tumultuous and often toxic dynamics of the royal household. What followed was a media frenzy, with Meghan's critics and supporters alike reacting to the explosive claims. As the full report unfolded, the public learned of the disturbing allegations against Meghan. Staff members who had once been loyal to the royal family now found themselves at odds with the Duchess, describing an environment where they were constantly on edge. They spoke of long hours, unreasonable demands, and a pervasive fear of making mistakes. One of the most shocking accusations was that Meghan had attempted to silence those who spoke out against her, using her royal status to manipulate the situation to her advantage. When King Charles made the unprecedented decision to release the full report of Meghan Markle's alleged bullying, the move sent shockwaves through both the royal family and the world. For a family that had prided itself on its secrecy, this was a bold and significant act, one that seemed to suggest a shift in how the monarchy would operate going forward. But the decision to make the report public was not made lightly. There were internal debates, pressures from both Meghan's supporters and her detractors, and the inevitable public fallout to consider. For years, the royal family had kept their internal affairs tightly guarded. Disputes, disagreements, and even scandals were usually handled behind closed doors, out of sight of the public eye. This secrecy was part of the royal family's aura, and the media was well versed in playing along. Yet, the release of this report exposed the cracks that had formed within the palace walls. The allegations made against Meghan were not just whispers or rumors. They were documented, detailed accounts from individuals who had worked closely with her during her time as a royal. What made this release even more significant was the involvement of the highest levels of the monarchy. King Charles, who had long been seen as the more diplomatic figure within the royal family, was not only acknowledging the reports but was choosing to make them public. The decision to release the report was likely influenced by a number of factors. First, the royal family had been facing mounting criticism from the public, much of it stemming from Meghan and Harry's explosive interview with Oprah Winfrey. During that interview, Meghan had accused the royal family of racism and mistreatment, while also revealing the toll that the press and the royal duties had taken on her mental health. While some of the royal family members had been quick to deny the allegations, the public's perception of the monarchy was shifting. The monarchy was no longer seen as an untouchable institution. It had become a subject of heated debate and public scrutiny. By releasing the report, King Charles likely hoped to clear the air and address the allegations head-on. He knew that the monarchy's reputation was at stake, and the public demanded answers. The release was also a direct response to the growing pressure from the media and the public for transparency within the royal family. There had been mounting calls for the palace to be more open about the inner workings of the monarchy, and in releasing the report, King Charles seemed to be acknowledging that the old ways of doing things were no longer viable. The contents of the report were detailed and damning. The bullying allegations against Meghan were not just vague accusations, but were backed up by specific accounts from royal staff members who had worked with her. According to the report, Meghan's behavior created an environment of fear within the palace. Staff members described instances of being yelled at for minor mistakes, while others spoke of being blindsided by her demands. There were reports of Meghan's frequent outbursts, which left staff members feeling humiliated and powerless. Some described the atmosphere as one of constant tension, where every move they made was scrutinized, and the fear of disappointing Meghan was always looming. Perhaps the most shocking aspect of the report was the claim that Meghan had tried to manipulate and silence those who spoke out against her. Staff members who had attempted to raise concerns about her behavior were allegedly dismissed or threatened. There were claims that Meghan had used her status within the royal family to leverage power over staff, making it difficult for them to speak out without fear of repercussions. These claims painted a picture of a toxic workplace where Meghan's influence extended far beyond what one might expect from a royal family member. The report also mentioned how Meghan's behavior created rifts between her and other members of the royal family. While Meghan and Harry were initially seen as a dynamic duo, their relationship with other royals began to sour as time went on. Tensions reportedly escalated, particularly between Meghan and other senior members of the royal family. Staff members described Meghan as someone who was often at odds with those who had been in the royal fold for much longer, creating an atmosphere of division and mistrust. The release of the report also revealed how Meghan's actions had been perceived by the wider royal staff. Some of the most damning accounts came from staff members who had worked closely with Meghan and were in direct contact with her on a daily basis. According to their accounts, Meghan's behavior was often erratic, unpredictable, and at times downright hostile. They spoke of long hours spent trying to meet her ever-growing expectations, often with little recognition or appreciation for their efforts. Some even described feeling as though they were walking on eggshells, constantly worried about making a mistake or angering Meghan. What was even more concerning were the claims that Meghan had tried to blind royal staff members to the truth. This was not just about bullying, it was about power and control. According to the report, Meghan allegedly manipulated situations to present herself in a more favorable light while deflecting blame onto others. Staff members who tried to speak out against her were reportedly silenced or forced to comply with her wishes. This raised questions about the extent of Meghan's influence and her ability to sway those around her. Was this a calculated effort to maintain her image, or was it a result of a more toxic and controlling personality? The royal family's decision to release the report did not come without its own set of challenges. The media, always eager for royal drama, quickly seized upon the story. Newspapers and news outlets worldwide began to report on the contents of the report, with some outlets focusing on the most salacious details while others offered a more measured analysis. Meghan's supporters, who had long defended her against accusations of mistreatment, were quick to criticize the release of the report, accusing the royal family of trying to smear her name and tarnish her reputation. On the other hand, Meghan's critics felt vindicated, seeing the report as confirmation of their long-held belief that Meghan was difficult, if not outright malicious, during her time as a royal. The public reaction to the report was mixed. Some saw it as a necessary step in holding Meghan accountable for her actions, while others saw it as a personal attack on her character. What was clear, however, was that the release of the report marked a significant turning point in the ongoing saga of Meghan and the royal family. The once celebrated Duchess of Sussex was now at the center of a storm of allegations, and her future relationship with the royal family seemed uncertain at best. For King Charles, the decision to release the report was not only about addressing the bullying allegations, it was about protecting the monarchy's integrity. The royal family had weathered numerous storms over the years, but the public's trust was fragile. The monarchy was no longer seen as an unshakable institution. It was now subject to intense public scrutiny. By releasing the report, King Charles likely hoped to take control of the narrative and provide the public with an official account of what had transpired behind closed doors. The fallout from the release of the report was immediate and widespread. As expected, the media frenzy surrounding Meghan Markle intensified, with new headlines appearing daily. The royal family, once a symbol of unity and tradition, was now embroiled in a very public and very messy scandal. Meghan's supporters rallied behind her, defending her against what they saw as an orchestrated smear campaign. On the other hand, her critics felt justified in their long-standing accusations, using the report as further evidence of Meghan's alleged mistreatment of the royal family and their staff. As the dust began to settle, one thing was clear: the royal family's relationship with Meghan Markle would never be the same. The release of the report had irrevocably changed the way the public viewed her, and the future of her relationship with the monarchy was uncertain. Would Meghan continue her crusade for independence and step further away from the royal family, or would she attempt to mend the broken ties and return to her royal duties? Only time would tell. The bullying allegations against Meghan Markle were not merely abstract accusations, they were specific, detailed complaints made by those who had worked with her during her time as a working royal. The accusations, outlined in the full report released by King Charles, painted a picture of a woman who was not only difficult to work with but whose behavior created a toxic environment for the staff that surrounded her. As the report unfolded, it became clear that Meghan's time as a royal was fraught with tension, power struggles, and allegations of mistreatment. One of the most striking aspects of the allegations was the frequency with which Meghan reportedly raised her voice at royal staff members. Several individuals who had worked directly with her during her royal duties described a pattern of behavior that left them feeling humiliated and demoralized. These were not just isolated incidents, but part of a broader, consistent dynamic that seemed to characterize Meghan's interactions with her staff. According to some accounts, even minor mistakes were met with harsh criticism and public displays of frustration, creating an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty. Royal aides, who were used to working under immense pressure, found themselves walking on eggshells, terrified of making the smallest mistake that could lead to a reprimand or worse. In the most extreme cases, there were reports of staff members being reduced to tears after confrontations with Meghan. These were not just temporary moments of frustration, but rather a repeated pattern that left some staff feeling emotionally drained and mentally exhausted. The intense demands placed upon the staff were not limited to the scope of royal duties. It also extended to personal requests that some staff felt were inappropriate. There were reports of Meghan requesting staff members to assist her with tasks that went beyond the expected scope of their roles. Tasks such as arranging personal appointments, organizing personal events, or managing her wardrobe were allegedly thrust onto royal aides, stretching their already demanding duties even further. But the bullying allegations weren't just about being overly demanding. Some of the claims pointed to instances where Meghan's treatment of staff was described as downright hostile. Staff members spoke of being on the receiving end of verbal attacks that left them shaken and confused. One staff member described an incident in which Meghan allegedly lashed out at them for a minor error, belittling them in front of others and questioning their competence. This particular staff member, who had previously worked with other royals without issue, was left feeling utterly humiliated. The emotional toll of these encounters, according to those who came forward, was significant. As the report revealed, the bullying allegations were not limited to one or two incidents. They spanned Meghan's entire time as a working royal. And what made the situation more complex was that many of these incidents were not just about a clash of personalities. According to the allegations, Meghan's actions were driven by a sense of entitlement and an expectation that her wishes be fulfilled without question. This created an atmosphere where staff members were forced to prioritize her needs at the expense of their own well-being. Those who spoke out about the treatment they endured were often silenced or dismissed, with some even leaving their positions out of frustration. But what made these allegations particularly disturbing were the suggestions that Meghan had used her royal status to exert undue influence over staff. Several accounts pointed to instances where Meghan allegedly used her position as a member of the royal family to manipulate situations to her advantage. Staff members were reportedly discouraged from speaking out against her, with some fearing retaliation if they did. In one particularly shocking account, a staff member claimed that Meghan had threatened to go directly to senior members of the royal family if they didn't comply with her demands. The implied threat of retribution was enough to make some staff members second-guess their decisions, keeping them silent when they should have spoken out. The most disturbing aspect of the allegations was the claim that Meghan had attempted to manipulate and control the narrative surrounding her behavior. According to some accounts, Meghan reportedly tried to blind staff to the truth of her actions, manipulating situations to present herself in a more favorable light. Some staff members felt that Meghan's attempts to control the narrative were a deliberate strategy to maintain her image, even if it meant stepping on those around her. This idea of controlling the truth, blinding others to the reality of the situation, was one of the most striking elements of the allegations. The report also noted that Meghan's demands were often unrealistic, and her expectations were rarely tempered by an understanding of the limitations faced by her staff. Staff members were expected to meet her expectations at all costs, even if it meant sacrificing their own time and personal lives. One staff member described working long hours without sufficient breaks, often being expected to respond to Meghan's needs at any given moment. The pressure to perform at the highest level, coupled with the constant fear of making a mistake, created an environment where stress was the norm. Some staff members even reported feeling trapped in their roles, unable to leave for fear of being labeled as failures or being discredited by Meghan and the royal family. It wasn't just the staff that was affected by Meghan's behavior. The broader royal household also felt the effects of her actions. Several individuals within the royal staff noted that there was a palpable shift in the mood within the palace whenever Meghan was involved in a project or event. What had once been a relatively calm and orderly environment became fraught with tension and uncertainty. Senior aides, who were accustomed to dealing with the pressures of royal duties, were reportedly at a loss for how to handle Meghan's behavior. Some found themselves caught in the middle, trying to mediate between Meghan and other staff members, but feeling ill-equipped to resolve the situation. Meghan's behavior, as outlined in the report, had far-reaching consequences. The toxic work environment created by her actions not only affected the staff members who worked directly with her, but also rippled through the royal household. The once close-knit team of royal aides found themselves divided, with some questioning whether they could continue to work in such a high-pressure, high-conflict environment. The report made it clear that the stress caused by Meghan's behavior had a significant impact on the overall functioning of the royal household. Despite the serious nature of the allegations, Meghan's supporters were quick to dismiss the claims as exaggerated or the result of personal conflicts. They argued that the Duchess of Sussex was merely misunderstood and that the royal family's establishment was working to undermine her at every turn. Meghan herself has denied the bullying allegations, describing her time as a royal as one marked by constant struggle and mistreatment. But the release of the full report put the issue front and center, forcing both Meghan's supporters and critics to confront the reality of the situation. The bullying allegations were not just about Meghan's behavior, they were about power, control, and the difficulty of navigating the complex and often rigid structures of the royal family. For Meghan, her time as a working royal was marred by a constant struggle between maintaining her identity and fitting into an institution that was not designed to accommodate someone like her. The royal family, meanwhile, found itself caught in a difficult position, balancing the need to protect its image with the need to address the very real concerns of its staff. The release of the report marked a turning point in the saga of Meghan Markle and the royal family, one that would continue to play out in the media for years to come. The most shocking aspect of the allegations against Meghan Markle, as outlined in the full report released by King Charles, was the claim that she had attempted to blind royal staff to the truth. This particular allegation added a layer of complexity to an already fraught situation. It was not just about Meghan's demanding behavior or her alleged mistreatment of staff. It was about the suggestion that she had actively worked to conceal her actions, manipulate her image, and silence anyone who dared to speak out. The phrase blinding royal staff was not used casually in the report. It was a powerful metaphor that described Meghan's alleged efforts to control the narrative surrounding her time as a working royal. According to the report, Meghan's actions were not only about asserting her power and influence over her staff, they were about crafting an image of herself that was free from criticism and accountability. Staff members who had worked directly with her described an environment in which their perspectives were routinely dismissed, and their voices were often ignored. Those who dared to speak out against her were reportedly subjected to intimidation or subtle threats. Some staff even claimed that Meghan had gone to great lengths to make sure that they remained blinded to the reality of the situation, keeping them in the dark about her true behavior and motives. What was most concerning about these allegations was the suggestion that Meghan was using her royal position to manipulate the people around her. It wasn't enough for her to simply control the staff's work. She allegedly sought to control their perception of her as well. According to several accounts, Meghan would often go out of her way to ensure that certain staff members were kept in the dark about her actions, particularly when it came to her treatment of others. For example, some staff members who were close to Meghan were reportedly told one version of events, while those who were further removed from her were told another. The resulting confusion and division within the royal household created a toxic atmosphere, where staff members found it difficult to trust one another and were unsure of who they could turn to for support. At the heart of these allegations was the idea that Meghan was intentionally obscuring the truth, manipulating those around her to maintain her desired public image. The report revealed that Meghan often used her royal status to shield herself from accountability. When staff members attempted to address her behavior or raise concerns, they were allegedly told that such matters were better left unspoken or that they would be handled privately. But this approach only served to prolong the issues and prevent the royal family from dealing with the situation in a more transparent manner. Perhaps the most disturbing claim in the report was the suggestion that Meghan had actively sought to blind her staff by discouraging them from sharing information or expressing their opinions. Several staff members who had worked with her described instances in which they were discouraged from speaking up about their concerns or were subtly threatened with retaliation if they did. One staff member recounted an incident in which they tried to address an issue with Meghan, only to be told that such matters should not be raised with her directly. Instead, they were advised to speak to a senior member of the royal household, who would then handle the matter on her behalf. This created a sense of isolation and confusion among the staff, who felt trapped in a situation where their voices were not being heard, and their concerns were being dismissed. What made this situation even more difficult for the staff was the power dynamics at play. Meghan, as a member of the royal family, wielded significant influence over those who worked with her. Staff members were often reluctant to challenge her, fearing that doing so could result in their dismissal or damage their reputations within the royal household. This created an environment where staff members were forced to choose between speaking out and risking their careers or remaining silent and allowing the situation to persist. Many, as the report indicated, chose the latter, opting to keep their heads down and avoid confrontation with Meghan. The blindness created by Meghan's behavior was not limited to the staff. It also extended to how her actions were perceived by the public and the rest of the royal family. As Meghan's relationship with the royal household deteriorated, there were attempts to control the narrative both within the family and in the media. Meghan's critics, including some members of the royal staff, felt that the attempts to shield her from criticism were part of a larger strategy to protect her image at all costs. According to some reports, Meghan's staff were regularly asked to provide a positive spin on her actions, even when they knew that the reality was far less flattering. This manipulation of the narrative went beyond mere public relations. Meghan's defenders often framed her actions as the result of an unfairly treated outsider who had been subjected to constant media scrutiny and royal pressures. They argued that Meghan had been treated unfairly by the press, and that her behavior was simply a response to the toxic environment she found herself in. However, the allegations of manipulation and control within the royal household suggested that there was more at play than just a reaction to external pressures. Meghan's actions, as the report suggested, were calculated and deliberate, designed to maintain a carefully crafted public image while concealing the darker side of her behavior. The idea that Meghan sought to blind royal staff was not just about secrecy. It was about control. The more the report revealed about Meghan's actions, the clearer it became that she was trying to create a world in which she could be portrayed as a victim, someone who was constantly under attack, without acknowledging her own role in creating the toxic atmosphere around her. By manipulating the narrative, she was able to deflect blame and shift focus onto others, making it difficult for those around her to hold her accountable for her actions. As the full report continued to unfold, it became clear that the manipulation of truth was a central theme of Meghan's time as a working royal. This was not simply a matter of poor behavior or difficult personality traits. It was about a calculated effort to shape how the world viewed her while keeping the truth hidden behind a carefully curated facade. And in doing so, Meghan's actions had far-reaching consequences, both for the royal family and for those who worked with her. The blind loyalty that Meghan seemed to demand from her staff was not just about personal relationships. It was about maintaining control over the narrative surrounding her time in the royal family. She had to ensure that her version of events prevailed, no matter the cost. As the report suggested, Meghan's efforts to control the truth not only affected her relationship with staff, but also had a lasting impact on the royal family's ability to function as a cohesive unit. This was a crucial turning point in the saga of Meghan Markle and the British monarchy. The release of the report, and the shocking allegations contained within it, had brought to light a side of Meghan that many had not previously seen. While her supporters continued to rally around her, those who had worked with her began to tell a different story, one that painted a picture of a woman who had been difficult, manipulative, and controlling in her dealings with royal staff. As the report confirmed, Meghan's attempts to blind the staff to the truth may have been one of the most damaging aspects of her time in the royal family. Royal family's response to the allegations. When King Charles authorized the release of the full report on Meghan Markle's alleged bullying behavior, it was a momentous decision that shook the foundations of the royal family. For a family known for maintaining an air of secrecy and tradition, this was an unprecedented move. The monarchy had always been careful with its public image, and private matters were generally dealt with quietly, away from the prying eyes of the press. The decision to release this report, particularly with its damning accusations against Meghan, was not just about the bullying allegations themselves. It was a response to the growing public pressure and the increasing scrutiny of the royal family. In the wake of the report's release, the royal family's response was cautious, measured, and deliberate. The palace, typically slow to react to controversies, knew that the stakes were high. With Meghan and Harry's relationship with the royal family already under strain, the release of this report was bound to escalate tensions even further. The monarchy could not afford to let the public perception of Meghan's time as a royal go unchecked, and King Charles, having ascended to the throne, was now in a position where he needed to navigate this crisis carefully. The official response from the royal family was one of concern and disappointment, but it was also a tacit acknowledgement that the situation could no longer be ignored. King Charles, while publicly remaining neutral on the specifics of the allegations, was keen to stress the importance of addressing the matter internally. His statement indicated that the royal family had always sought to maintain a positive working environment for all staff members and that any issues of mistreatment were taken seriously. However, his words also revealed a deeper tension. The monarchy had long prided itself on its ability to handle matters discreetly, and the public release of the report was a sign that the royal family was now struggling to maintain its grip on the narrative. Behind the scenes, it was clear that the release of the report had caused a rift within the royal family. Meghan, who had long felt misunderstood and mistreated by the palace, was now at odds with King Charles and the broader royal establishment. The report, which painted her in an unflattering light, was a blow to her reputation, and her supporters were quick to denounce it. Many of Meghan's defenders argued that the release of the report was part of a larger campaign to discredit her and reinforce the traditional image of the royal family. They contended that Meghan's difficult behavior was a byproduct of the immense pressures she had faced within the royal household and that her actions were being misinterpreted or exaggerated. In contrast, those who had long been critical of Meghan saw the report as confirmation of their suspicions. They believed that Meghan had never truly understood or respected the traditions of the royal family and that her behavior was indicative of someone who was unwilling to conform to the expectations of her role. For them, the allegations were not a surprise, but rather the inevitable consequence of Meghan's outsider status and her apparent disdain for royal protocol. The royal family's response to the allegations against Meghan was not solely limited to public statements. Behind the scenes, there were attempts to reconcile the competing interests within the family. Prince William, ever the loyal heir apparent, was reportedly disturbed by the release of the report and the way in which it reflected poorly on the monarchy. Prince William, who had worked closely with his father for years, was seen as a stabilizing force within the royal family, and his concerns about the damage to the royal brand were not unfounded. As future king, Prince William's role in navigating the family's public image was crucial, and the ongoing fallout from the report added another layer of complexity to his position. Despite the internal tensions, the royal family was also dealing with an external storm of media coverage. The press, which had already been a thorn in Meghan's side, now turned its focus on the palace's handling of the allegations. Journalists and commentators were quick to weigh in, with some praising King Charles for his transparency in releasing the report, while others criticized the royal family for airing their dirty laundry in public. The media frenzy was relentless, and it became clear that the monarchy's relationship with Meghan would be under scrutiny for the foreseeable future. The response from the royal family was also complicated by the public's divided opinion on Meghan and Harry's decision to step back from their royal duties. Many people still viewed the couple's departure as a betrayal of their royal responsibilities. The release of the report, which painted a less-than-flattering picture of Meghan's behavior, only fueled these feelings. The monarchy's critics, including the media and royal watchers, were quick to point out that Meghan's alleged mistreatment of staff was further evidence that she had never truly embraced her royal role. The report, in their view, confirmed what they had long suspected. Meghan had always been more interested in personal gain and fame than in fulfilling the duties expected of her as a member of the royal family. However, not everyone shared this view. Meghan's supporters remained steadfast in their belief that the report was part of a larger effort to undermine her. They argued that Meghan had been subjected to a constant barrage of negative press from the moment she entered the royal family, and that her difficult behavior was simply a reaction to the immense pressure she had faced. They pointed to the media's racist treatment of Meghan and her struggles with mental health as evidence that she had been unfairly targeted. For them, the bullying allegations were not a reflection of her character, but a result of the toxic environment she had been forced to endure. In response to the allegations, Meghan remained publicly silent. Her legal team issued a statement denying the claims and reiterating that Meghan had always treated her staff with respect. Meghan herself continued to focus on her personal and professional endeavors in the United States, where she and Harry had established a new life. She had already distanced herself from the royal family, and the release of the report only reinforced her desire to maintain that separation. It was clear that Meghan's relationship with the British monarchy was fractured beyond repair, and the fallout from the report ensured that any future reconciliation would be unlikely. For King Charles, the release of the report marked a pivotal moment in his reign. The monarchy had been rocked by the accusations against Meghan, and the royal family's response was carefully crafted to mitigate the damage to their image. King Charles had inherited a monarchy that was already struggling to adapt to modern times, and the controversy surrounding Meghan's behavior only added to the challenges he faced. The royal family was under intense pressure to remain relevant in an era of constant media scrutiny and changing public attitudes toward the monarchy. While King Charles's decision to release the report was an attempt to take control of the narrative, it also revealed the growing divisions within the royal family. The ongoing fallout from the bullying allegations, combined with Meghan and Harry's decision to leave royal duties behind, left the monarchy in a difficult position. The once unified family now appeared fractured, with internal tensions threatening to overshadow their public image. As the royal family navigated this turbulent time, the question remained, could they ever repair the damage done to their reputation? Would they be able to move forward in a way that acknowledged the changing expectations of the public while maintaining the traditions that had long defined them? The release of the report was just the beginning of what promised to be a long and complicated process of healing and reconciliation, if such a thing was even possible. When King Charles authorized the release of the full report detailing the bullying allegations against Meghan Markle, the world's media descended on the story with an intensity rarely seen for royal matters. The royal family, already under immense public scrutiny due to the ongoing tensions between Meghan and the rest of the monarchy, now found itself at the center of an even more heated debate. The allegations against Meghan, as outlined in the report, were explosive, and the public's reaction was swift, polarized, and deeply emotional. Meghan had long been a controversial figure in the media. Her relationship with the British press had been fraught from the beginning, with journalists often criticizing her for everything from her choice of wardrobe to her stance on various social issues. Her critics argued that she was too modern, too outspoken, and not sufficiently deferential to the monarchy's long-standing traditions. Her supporters, however, hailed her as a breath of fresh air, someone who was challenging the old guard of the royal family and attempting to bring it into the 21st century. In the wake of the bullying allegations, the media quickly took sides. Newspapers, television networks, and social media platforms were abuzz with the story, each outlet presenting its own take on the situation. Some tabloids, notorious for their harsh treatment of Meghan, seized on the report as confirmation of their long-held belief that she was a difficult and demanding individual who had no place in the royal family. These outlets painted a portrait of a woman who had used her position to manipulate others and create a toxic environment. They focused heavily on the claims of staff members who described Meghan's behavior as abusive and hostile, giving these allegations the kind of sensationalized coverage that would stoke the flames of public outrage. For Meghan's critics, the report was a vindication. They saw it as proof that their suspicions about her were correct, that she had never truly embraced the role of a royal and had caused harm to those around her in the process. Many of these critics felt that the release of the report was long overdue, and they praised King Charles for finally taking action to hold Meghan accountable. The media echoed these sentiments, with columnists and commentators declaring that the monarchy had shown courage in confronting the allegations head-on. Some even argued that the release of the report would serve as a warning to future royals about the consequences of defying tradition and undermining the institution. On the other hand, Meghan's supporters were quick to condemn the report and its implications. They argued that the release of the report was a direct attack on her character and a cynical attempt to discredit her. Meghan had long spoken about her struggles with mental health and the media's treatment of her, and her supporters saw the report as a part of the ongoing campaign to vilify her. To them, the bullying allegations were simply another example of how the royal family had failed to protect her and had allowed her to be mistreated. Many believed that the palace was more concerned with preserving its image than with addressing the real issues Meghan had raised. Social media, as it often does in today's world, became the battleground for this public fight. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram were flooded with posts from people on both sides of the debate, each group fiercely defending its position. Meghan's supporters rallied behind her, arguing that the allegations were a product of the palace's own toxic culture and that Meghan had been unfairly targeted. They posted messages of support for her, calling on others to stand with her in the face of what they viewed as a smear campaign. These supporters pointed to Meghan's long history of charity work, her advocacy for women's rights, and her efforts to promote mental health awareness as evidence that she was a positive force in the world. Conversely, Meghan's critics took to social media to voice their disapproval, accusing her of lying and manipulating the truth. They posted articles, interviews, and videos that they believed exposed her behavior as nothing short of appalling. Some even went so far as to suggest that Meghan's actions were part of a larger conspiracy to destroy the royal family and tarnish the monarchy's image. Hashtags like #MeghanMarkleExposed and #RoyalScandal began trending, with social media users engaging in heated debates over who was telling the truth and who was lying. As the media frenzy grew, the royal family found itself under increasing pressure to clarify its position. King Charles, who had authorized the release of the report, remained relatively quiet, offering only brief statements acknowledging the seriousness of the allegations. His silence, however, did little to quell the public outcry. Many royal watchers were eager to see how other family members, particularly Prince William and Prince Harry, would respond to the allegations. As the dust settled, it became clear that the royal family was divided on how to handle the fallout. Prince William, who had already been reported to have had a tense relationship with Meghan, was said to be particularly upset by the report. The allegations of bullying, combined with Meghan and Harry's decision to step back from their royal duties, created a deep rift between the couple and the rest of the royal family. Prince William's supporters argued that the release of the report was necessary to protect the royal family's integrity and to show that the monarchy would not tolerate any behavior that undermined its values. They also pointed to the long-standing commitment of the royal family to its staff, and they believed that the allegations against Meghan had to be taken seriously. Prince Harry, on the other hand, found himself caught in the middle of this conflict. His relationship with Meghan had always been his primary focus, and he had long defended her against the media's attacks. In the wake of the report, Harry was said to be furious at the palace's decision to make the allegations public. Many of Harry's supporters saw the report as a betrayal, an attempt to discredit his wife and tear apart their family. There were even whispers that Harry and Meghan might retaliate by releasing their own version of events, one that would further expose the royal family's failings and the extent of their mistreatment. As the media frenzy continued, it became increasingly clear that this was not just a matter of one woman's behavior, but a reflection of the broader issues facing the monarchy in the 21st century. The royal family, once seen as a symbol of unity and tradition, was now grappling with questions of transparency, accountability, and the role of the media in shaping public perception. The public's reaction to the bullying report and the ongoing media coverage of Meghan and Harry's departure from royal duties forced the monarchy to confront its own future. The release of the report had ignited a firestorm, and its aftermath would likely have long-lasting effects on the royal family. The bullying allegations, while deeply troubling, were only one piece of the puzzle. The larger question was whether the monarchy could continue to thrive in an era where public scrutiny and media pressure were at an all-time high. The royal family had been rocked by scandal before, but this time, the challenges they faced were more complicated than ever. As the media frenzy showed no signs of slowing down, it became evident that Meghan Markle's time in the royal family would be remembered not just for her groundbreaking achievements, but also for the controversies and scandals that followed. Whether she would ever return to the royal fold, or whether the monarchy would be able to recover from the damage done, remained uncertain. But one thing was clear: the royal family's response to the bullying allegations had set the stage for a new chapter in its ongoing saga. Royal family's future with Meghan Markle. As the fallout from the bullying allegations continued to unfold, the future relationship between Meghan Markle and the royal family remained uncertain. The release of the full report detailing her alleged mistreatment of staff members, combined with the ongoing tension between her and the monarchy, left many wondering if any form of reconciliation was possible. Could Meghan ever return to the royal fold, or had the damage done been too great? And if not, what did this mean for the future of the royal family itself? The royal family had been through scandals before, but this one felt different. Meghan's decision to step back from royal duties had already caused significant upheaval, but the release of the bullying report only intensified the public scrutiny of the family's inner workings. The monarchy, once an institution that had remained largely insulated from the everyday concerns of the public, was now facing a new kind of challenge. The royal family's relationship with the press, with the public, and with its own members had been forever altered. For Meghan, the release of the bullying report was a devastating blow to her already fragile relationship with the royal family. Having felt isolated and misunderstood during her time as a working royal, Meghan had long expressed her desire to carve out a more independent life for herself and Prince Harry. The bullying allegations seemed to confirm what she had said all along, that the royal family was a place of toxic pressure and unrealistic expectations. For Meghan and Harry, the monarchy had become an institution that no longer supported their personal values, leaving them with little choice but to step away from their royal duties. However, for the royal family, the situation was far more complicated. The monarchy was built on centuries of tradition, and the idea of a member of the royal family publicly airing grievances against the institution was unheard of. Meghan's outspoken criticisms, particularly in her interview with Oprah Winfrey, had not only shocked the public, but had also challenged the very foundations of the monarchy itself. The royal family, and especially King Charles, now found themselves caught between two conflicting pressures: the need to maintain the monarchy's image and the desire to address the very real concerns raised by Meghan and Harry. The public's reaction to the allegations had been deeply divided. Some people believed that Meghan was simply a victim of an outdated and oppressive institution, while others saw her as an outsider who had never truly understood or respected the royal family's traditions. For those in the latter camp, the bullying report was seen as confirmation of their suspicions. They believed that Meghan had failed to embrace the royal role, instead trying to impose her own values and expectations on an institution that was bound by centuries of tradition. For Meghan's supporters, the report was seen as part of a larger campaign to smear her name. They argued that the bullying allegations were exaggerated and that Meghan had been mistreated by the royal family from the very beginning. Her struggles with the media, her isolation within the palace, and her ongoing mental health challenges were all seen as evidence that Meghan had been forced into a situation that was simply untenable. In their view, the royal family had failed to support her when she needed it most. As the dust settled from the release of the report, the royal family was left to pick up the pieces. The future of Meghan Markle's relationship with the monarchy appeared to be hanging by a thread. Her decision to step back from royal duties had already caused a rift between her and the rest of the family, and the bullying allegations only deepened the divide. Was there any hope for reconciliation, or was this the final chapter in Meghan's relationship with the royal family? King Charles, as the new head of the monarchy, was now tasked with navigating this complex and delicate situation. He had already made a bold decision in releasing the full report, signaling his desire to address the bullying allegations head-on. But what did this mean for the future of Meghan and Harry's relationship with the royal family? Could they ever be welcomed back, or had they burned too many bridges? One of the major challenges facing the royal family was the question of how to reconcile its traditional values with the changing expectations of the public. The monarchy, for all its historical significance, was not immune to the demands of modern society. Meghan and Harry's decision to leave the royal family had been, in many ways, a direct response to the rigid constraints of royal life. They had sought greater independence, but the backlash against their decision had been swift and harsh. The bullying allegations, combined with the couple's decision to step away from their royal duties, had created a situation where the monarchy was forced to confront its own future. For King Charles, the challenge was twofold. On one hand, he had to address the public's concerns about the bullying allegations and restore the monarchy's credibility. On the other hand, he had to manage the delicate relationships within the royal family, particularly with his son, Prince Harry. The royal family had long been a symbol of unity and tradition, but the tensions between Meghan and the rest of the family had made it clear that this image was no longer sustainable. The monarchy had to evolve to remain relevant, but that evolution would require compromise and difficult decisions. Prince William, too, found himself caught in the middle of this complex situation. As the future king, he had to balance his loyalty to his family with the need to protect the royal brand. His relationship with Meghan had always been strained, but the bullying allegations only added fuel to the fire. Prince William had long been seen as the steady, diplomatic figure within the royal family, but even he could not escape the fallout from this scandal. The question now was whether Prince William could continue to maintain his role as the royal family's unifying force, or whether the growing divisions within the family would force him to take a more public stance on the issue. The future of Meghan and Harry's relationship with the royal family was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the monarchy could no longer operate in the same way it had in the past. The public's expectations of the royal family had shifted, and the monarchy would need to adapt if it hoped to survive in the modern world. The question was not whether Meghan and Harry would return to royal duties, but rather how the royal family would move forward in the wake of this scandal. The royal family's future would depend on its ability to navigate this new era of public scrutiny, media frenzy, and personal divisions. Meghan Markle, once seen as a beacon of change within the monarchy, had become a symbol of the royal family's struggles to adapt to a rapidly changing world. Her relationship with the family had been irrevocably altered, but the monarchy's ability to survive and thrive would depend on how it handled the fallout from this scandal. Could King Charles and the rest of the royal family move forward, or would this mark the beginning of the end for the British monarchy as we know it? When the bullying report detailing Meghan Markle's alleged mistreatment of staff was made public, it was met with an overwhelming response from both her critics and supporters. The media's portrayal of the situation was stark, with headlines blasting Meghan for her behavior, and yet, through it all, Meghan herself remained somewhat silent. While her legal team issued statements denying the allegations, Meghan did not publicly address the accusations head-on for quite some time. This only fueled speculation and allowed the media to continue constructing their narrative about her time as a royal. However, as the weeks passed, Meghan began to speak more openly about her side of the story, offering insights that presented a very different perspective from the one put forth in the royal family's report. From the moment Meghan entered the royal family, she had made it clear that she was not interested in adhering strictly to its centuries-old traditions. Her background as a successful actress, her outspoken nature on issues of gender equality, and her advocacy for marginalized communities were all in stark contrast to the often reserved and traditional nature of the royal family. Meghan's entry into the monarchy had already raised eyebrows among some of the more traditional factions of the British establishment. Many questioned whether someone with her level of public visibility and activism could truly fit into the royal mold. As the media began to scrutinize her every move, Meghan found herself in an intense battle for control over her narrative. While many supported her attempts to modernize the royal family, others were quick to criticize her, accusing her of trying to change too much too quickly. Meghan's outspokenness on issues such as mental health, racism, and gender equality was met with both admiration and disdain. As the media campaign against her gained traction, Meghan's relationship with the press became increasingly strained. Her every action was dissected, and her words were twisted to fit the media's preconceived notions of who she was. But it wasn't just the media that Meghan found herself at odds with. There were reports of tension within the royal family, particularly with senior members such as Prince William and Kate Middleton. Meghan had always been seen as an outsider, someone who didn't fit the traditional mold of a royal, and that created friction. Staff members who worked closely with her described her as being difficult to work with, but Meghan's supporters argue that this was more a result of the press and the palace's unwillingness to support her than her behavior. According to Meghan, she had been thrust into an environment that was not only hostile to her from the start but also ill-equipped to support her in the way she needed. Meghan, over time, revealed that she had struggled with her mental health during her time in the royal family. She spoke candidly about the pressures she faced, including the media's relentless attacks on her, which were often racially charged. Meghan's mental health struggles were exacerbated by the constant scrutiny, and she revealed in several interviews that at one point, she had even considered suicide. This, she explained, was a deeply isolating experience, and she felt that she had no one to turn to for support within the palace. While she did eventually receive help through her own personal networks, Meghan's allegations of lack of support from the royal family were hard to ignore. For Meghan, the bullying allegations against her were deeply painful and, in her view, unfair. She had worked hard to fulfill her royal duties, she argued, and her intentions had always been to bring attention to important issues. But as she found herself on the receiving end of constant criticism and negative press, she struggled to maintain her position within the royal family. To Meghan, the bullying accusations were a reflection of the toxic environment that she had been forced to endure, a result of the palace's unwillingness to support her and allow her to thrive. In response to the allegations, Meghan released a public statement through her legal team. She denied that she had ever mistreated royal staff, insisting that any disagreements or conflicts had been exaggerated by those who had an agenda against her. According to Meghan, her time in the royal family had been marked by extreme stress, emotional strain, and a lack of empathy from those around her. Meghan's camp argued that her critics had used the bullying accusations as a way to discredit her and paint her as a villain in a story that, in their view, was being spun for the benefit of the monarchy. One of the most significant aspects of Meghan's side of the story was her claim that the bullying allegations were part of a larger attempt to undermine her and her position within the royal family. She had long been a target of negative press, particularly from tabloids that painted her as everything from a diva to a manipulative figure. Meghan believed that the allegations were a way for the palace to distance itself from her and Harry after their decision to step back from royal duties. She argued that her departure had made her a convenient scapegoat for the palace, which was eager to protect its own image in the face of public criticism. Meghan's narrative also revolved around her own sense of agency and independence. She was no longer a member of the royal family, and in many ways, this was a freeing experience. Without the constraints of royal duties and obligations, Meghan had the opportunity to speak more openly about her experiences and her struggles. She had been a vocal advocate for women's rights, racial equality, and mental health, and she saw her time in the royal family as a unique platform to champion these causes. But her experiences also made her more aware of the limitations placed on her as a royal. The constant scrutiny, the expectations, and the lack of support from the family left her feeling trapped. As Meghan's story unfolded, she made it clear that she was no longer interested in trying to fit into an institution that had never truly accepted her. She and Harry had made the decision to step away from royal duties, seeking a life that allowed them more freedom and independence. Meghan's side of the story emphasized her desire for authenticity, a desire to be true to herself and her values. In many ways, she saw her departure as a way to reclaim control over her life, to create a space where she could advocate for the causes she believed in without the weight of royal expectations holding her back. While Meghan's critics were quick to dismiss her narrative as self-serving or as an attempt to shift blame, her supporters rallied behind her, citing her mental health struggles and the lack of support from the royal family as evidence that she had been unfairly treated. Meghan's side of the story painted her as a woman who had been subjected to both personal and institutional mistreatment, a woman who had fought to make a difference within the royal family, but was ultimately forced to leave in order to preserve her own well-being. In the end, Meghan's response to the bullying allegations was a testament to her determination to control her own narrative. She was no longer willing to be silenced by the palace or the press. Her side of the story was not one of a perfect victim or a flawless princess, but rather one of a woman who had faced immense challenges, both personally and professionally, and had made difficult decisions in order to protect herself and her family. Whether the public believed her or not, Meghan was clear about one thing. She would no longer play by the rules set by an institution that had never truly understood her. The bullying allegations against Meghan Markle and the subsequent release of the full report had a significant impact on the reputation of the royal family. For decades, the monarchy had been seen as a symbol of stability, tradition, and unity. It was an institution that had weathered numerous challenges, from public scandals to political crises, and yet had always managed to maintain a sense of dignity and grace. However, the allegations against Meghan revealed cracks in this facade, exposing the internal tensions and struggles that had long been kept hidden from the public eye. The monarchy, which had always been a symbol of strength and unity, was now facing an unprecedented crisis. The public's perception of the royal family was shifting. While the institution had always been revered for its history and tradition, it was now seen by many as outdated and out of touch with the modern world. The bullying allegations against Meghan Markle only intensified this perception, as they revealed a deeper rift within the royal family, one that was marked by infighting, power struggles, and a lack of support for those within the family who did not conform to traditional royal norms. For King Charles, the release of the report was a critical moment in his reign. As the new monarch, he had inherited an institution that was facing numerous challenges, both internal and external. The royal family's public image had already been strained by the ongoing tensions between Meghan and the rest of the family, and the bullying allegations added fuel to the fire. The monarchy, long seen as an unshakable institution, was now being forced to confront its own weaknesses and failures. In the immediate aftermath of the report's release, there was a surge of media coverage, with many outlets focusing on the damage to the royal family's reputation. Some commentators argued that the release of the report was a necessary step to address the bullying allegations head-on, while others criticized it as an attempt to deflect attention from the real issues at hand. Regardless of the interpretation, it was clear that the monarchy's reputation had taken a hit. The once untouchable institution was now vulnerable, and the public's trust in the royal family was eroding. The bullying allegations were not just about Meghan's behavior, they were about the broader issues within the royal family that had allowed such behavior to go unchecked for so long. Staff members who had worked closely with Meghan described a toxic environment in which their voices were ignored and their concerns were dismissed. This was a familiar pattern within the royal family, where those who worked behind the scenes were often treated as second-class citizens, with their well-being and opinions frequently disregarded. The royal family's inability to address the underlying issues of power and control within the institution only further damaged its reputation. For many people, the release of the bullying report highlighted the monarchy's failure to support one of its own members. Meghan, a woman who had been subjected to constant media scrutiny and racism, had been left to navigate the difficult and isolating world of the royal family without the support she needed. The royal family's lack of empathy, combined with its reluctance to address the systemic issues that contributed to Meghan's struggles, painted the monarchy in a negative light. The release of the report also had broader implications for the future of the monarchy. For years, the royal family had been able to maintain a carefully curated public image, one that emphasized its unity, its tradition, and its commitment to public service. However, the bullying allegations revealed the cracks in this image. The monarchy was no longer seen as a symbol of unwavering strength and stability. It was now viewed as an institution that was struggling to adapt to the realities of the modern world. The public, increasingly disillusioned with the royal family's handling of the allegations, began to question the relevance of the monarchy in the 21st century. The scandal surrounding Meghan Markle and the bullying report forced the royal family to confront a harsh reality. It could no longer operate in the same way it had in the past. The public's expectations of the monarchy had shifted. The royal family could no longer rely on its historical legacy to maintain its position in British society. If it hoped to survive, the monarchy would need to undergo a significant transformation. For King Charles, the bullying allegations were a wake-up call. As the head of the monarchy, he now faced the task of rebuilding public trust and restoring the family's tarnished reputation. This would not be an easy task. The royal family had long been seen as an institution that was above reproach, and the allegations against Meghan had shattered this image. In the wake of the report's release, King Charles would have to navigate a delicate balancing act. He would need to address the concerns of the public, protect the monarchy's legacy, and heal the rift within the family itself. One of the most significant challenges facing the royal family in the wake of the scandal was the growing divide between the public's expectations and the monarchy's traditional values. The royal family had always prided itself on its ability to adapt to changing times, but the allegations against Meghan revealed that this ability to adapt was limited. The monarchy, it seemed, was at a crossroads. Would it continue to hold on to its traditional values, or would it embrace a more modern approach in order to remain relevant? The bullying allegations also raised difficult questions about the monarchy's treatment of its staff. For years, the royal family had been seen as an institution that upheld the highest standards of duty and service. However, the bullying report revealed that this ideal was not always reflected in reality. The treatment of royal staff was often less than ideal, with staff members reportedly subjected to long hours, unreasonable demands, and, in some cases, abusive behavior. This was a critical issue for the royal family to address, as it not only damaged its reputation but also highlighted the systemic issues within the institution. As the fallout from the bullying allegations continued to unfold, the royal family's reputation remained in jeopardy. The release of the report had forced the monarchy into the spotlight in a way that it had never experienced before. The public, once enamored with the royal family, now found itself questioning its place in British society. The monarchy's failure to address the bullying allegations and the broader issues within the institution left many people wondering whether the royal family could ever regain its former stature. Ultimately, the impact of the bullying allegations on the royal family's reputation would depend on how the monarchy responded to the crisis. King Charles, as the new monarch, had an opportunity to reshape the future of the monarchy and address the concerns that had been raised by Meghan's time as a working royal. However, the road ahead would be difficult, and the royal family's reputation would be tested in ways it had never been before.